TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Welcome to another edition of the RF Video Shoot interview series. Today we're joined by a true legend in the sport of professional wrestling, Baron Von Raschke. Thanks for being here today with us.
That's right, I'm here. Start the interview.
My very first question to you was, were you a wrestling fan growing up?
Not really. I started out wanting to be like my older brother. He played football, he played basketball, and he ran track. He was a good athlete. And I worshiped my older brother. I wanted to be exactly like him. So I went out for football. I was a short, chubby child, but I did my best. And they kept me on the team. And I grew, and I got better and better and better. I went out for basketball. Thank you, basketball. Because that's how I became a wrestler. My older brother, he could dribble and he could shoot. But the coaches found out right away as a freshman that Baron couldn't dribble and couldn't shoot. So there was my name at the top of the list. Cut! Cut from the team. What could I do? So my father said, go out for the wrestling team. So I walked into Mr. Eckfeld's office at North High in Omaha, Nebraska. And I said, Mr. Eckfeld, I would like to try out for wrestling. And he said, well, we're pretty far into the season, and if you come out now, you just get your clock clean, and you'll quit. You have to wait till next year. So I waited, and the next year after football, I went to Mr. Eckfeld, and I said I want to be a wrestler. And he said, okay. So I started out and I wrestled and I learned all the basics that I could. And wrestling's a sport where you learn step by step. It's not like tennis. There are no teenage phenoms. You go out and you work. It's a hard sport, a tough sport. But I did it all. I did it the way I was supposed to.
Who was your mentor?
That would be Mr. Eckfeld, Verne Gagne from Omaha North High School. Anyway, and my father, of course, he loved wrestling, amateur wrestling, and boxing. And so my sophomore year, I didn't make the team. In my junior year, after football again, I went out and I worked just as hard, harder even. And I didn't make the team. But nothing was going to stop me. My senior year, I went out for wrestling. I made the team. The first tournament I was in, the North High Invitational, I won. I not only won, but I beat the champion from South High. I beat him and won the championship. And then I went on, dual meet after dual meet. Well, I take that back. The next meet, I wrestled the same guy from South High, and he beat me. He beat me. Which upset me a bit, by the way. Made me even more determined. So then I went out and match after match after match. 19 in all, if I remember right. And I probably don't. I beat them all. And there I was in a state tournament. And eventually, I came to the finals. I made it to the semifinals and the quarterfinals and all the preliminary matches. In the finals against Bill Pickering. And guess who Bill Pickering was? Last year's state champ that I'd beaten in the Northern Invitational. And he beat me the next week. Bill Pickering. I went out and I wrestled him. And I won the bid. I won the state title. Nebraska state champion. I was so happy. My father was so happy. Everybody was so happy. I might have even gotten a date that week. I don't think so, but maybe. Anyway, that was the start of my wrestling career in high school. Sophomore in high school. And then I had decided I wanted to go to the University of Nebraska, being raised in Omaha. And there I went, and I walked onto the football field, and I said, "Give me a suit. I want to be a football player." And I had some success in playing football at North High. And they said, "Okay, we'll give you a suit." I was a walk-on. They call them walk-ons now. They gave me a suit. And by the second semester, they'd given me a scholarship, a full scholarship to play football. But I still wanted to wrestle. And I was very fortunate because the coach of the wrestling team was Bill Smith, an Olympic champion. And he gave me so much knowledge and inspiration. And all the wrestlers that he drew to come and work out with us that didn't even go to the school. Russ Camilleri, Dan Brand, a graduate. They came back and they helped me and helped me and helped me. And eventually, by the time I was a senior, I won a Big 8 championship. Then I was drafted into the Army. And then I wrestled on 2 world teams. I made the Olympic team. Got hurt, didn't go.
What happened in '64? Just to let you know.
64, you even know.
Yeah. I didn't want you to think you have to do this in character. I mean,
I can do it any way I want, right?
You can do whatever.
I like to do it this way.
Okay, it's up to you.
But I can do it this way, too.
All right, cool. That way you don't get burned out.
Yes.
So,
in 64, what happened?
In '64, when you were going over to the Olympics, what happened with your injury that kept you from competing?
Okay, well, I won the tryouts at the. They were actually held at the New York World's Fair. You know that big globe that they always show?
Yeah.
It's still there. Right below that or near that, there was an arena, outdoor arena, and the sun was beating down, and the urethane mats were getting real soft, and guys would get suplexed and get knocked out. And it was not the greatest place, but anyway, it worked out pretty good for me. Anyway, I wrestled and I won, and I won the Greco-Roman part of the tournament, and Larry Christoph won the freestyle tournament. And then we were taken down to Annapolis in Maryland, the academy, the Naval Academy, and Roger Staubach was the big quarterback back then, and we would go into the, we'd go into the dining hall where the cadets were, but we were separated, of course, because we were cadets, and have our meals and stuff. And every day they'd come in and they'd grab Roger and they'd pick him up on his shoulders and they'd dance around the room because he was a big hero and he deserved all that too. It was great. But anyway, it was that kind of a scenario. Anyway, and then we had some workouts and stuff. And during a workout, one of the other wrestlers who I had beaten 4 times at the time, was also invited to work out with us, and somehow he'd hooked me below the elbow and tried to suplex me or salto me or whatever he's trying to do, and it hyperextended my elbow, and then he did it once, and then he did it twice, and really injured the elbow, and I left the area, and then it swelled up, and it was almost time for us to catch the plane to go to Tokyo, and I was hurt, so they didn't take me, they took him, and anyway, I didn't get to go to the Olympics. I made the team, but I didn't get to go. So the how'd they say that on ABC Sports? The thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. I suffered that. I'm almost over it now, by the way.
Let's talk about your early upbringing in the sport of professional wrestling as far as the training goes. Who would you consider your mentor then?
My first mentor, of course, was I was stationed in the Army, and I wrote to a guy in my hometown, Joe Dusick, who worked with a man named Verne Gagne, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of, who was a very famous pro wrestler. He's also an amateur wrestler. And I sent Joe Dusick my credentials from, this is about a year later after the Olympic thing, and I'd hurt my knee. I was in the hospital with a fellow named John Cunningham who had the same injury, and he was a wrestling fan. And I watched it on TV, and I thought, oh, that's something I might want to do. Up to the time, I was making $95 a month. What do you know? I thought they'd probably make more than that, maybe. Turns out not necessarily true, but anyway, I wrote to this fellow, Joe Dusick in Omaha, and very nice man, by the way, and he said, well, it's nice to have to write back, and I sent him all my amateur credentials, of course. So I'm sure the guys in the locker room had a big laugh about that. Anyway, because it's different for pro wrestling. Anyway, he wrote a nice letter back and said, I don't have any facilities to train you, but I'll introduce you to Verne Gagne, and he'll probably train you. And sure enough, I got out of the Army to teach school. I was a zoology major, and I was licensed to teach biology and general science. So I got a job teaching biology and general science at Horace Mann High School in junior high, and I promoted myself, junior high in Omaha, and so I was teaching there for a year. I decided not to take Joe up on his generous offer to introduce me to Verne. Anyway, after several months, I still had the bug to wrestle, so I made the 1965 World Championship team for representing the U.S. And I went there. I won, and I went there, and I didn't do that great. But anyway, after it was over, I thought, well, there's got to be a better way to make money than teaching school and this, that, and the other. And I remember the days with John Cunningham watching TV on Saturdays, and crazy Luke Graham, or Jerry Graham, crazy Jerry Graham, and all that stuff. And I thought, well, maybe I'll call Joe Dusick. So I did. I called Joe Dusick, and he said, well, if you come down to the TV station, so-and-so, I was back home living with my folks. So I went to the station, and I said, I went there, and sure enough, he was true to his word. He introduced me to Verne Gagne, who was there, and they had a crew coming down from Minneapolis to work the Omaha part of they were like partners, Joe and Verne Gagne and Wally Carbo. They were partners, and whatever. I didn't know how the business part of it worked. Anyway, he introduced me to Verne Gagne, so Verne said, well, I'll be happy to break you into the business. I know of your record and accomplishments and stuff, and this, that, and the other. And so my younger brother had a nice car that could make it to Minneapolis. And Verne lived in Minneapolis, of course, so I had to drive from Omaha to Minneapolis. And I brought my little brother's car, Arts, and I drove up to Minneapolis, and I got to the wrestling office, found my way to the wrestling office at the Dykeman Hotel. Met Wally Carbo and Joe Casisto, the office assistant. But Verne had been sick, so he wasn't there. And then they suggested I check into a motel and come back and check with him. And after about 4 weeks, Verne finally was well enough to start training me. And by then I'd moved in with a buddy of mine from the Army, Charlie Coffey, and another friend, Tom Lampy, and his friend, Tom Lampy, and now my friend. So anyway, I started to work out with Verne at his farm and in his on his ring, and he started to show me the basics of wrestling. Of course, we did a lot of extensive training, push-ups, set-ups, running and chopping wood and jumping jacks and all that stuff. And finally, after 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, whatever it was, he said, "This is the way it is with professional wrestling." And he told me a little bit about what professional wrestling was all about. And he says, "I'm going to take you to a match." And there was an outdoor match at the St. Paul baseball park, and he drove me over there. I met him, and he drove me over there. And on the main event was 2 guys. I didn't really know them, but they were famous, of course. One was Dark Crusher. The other was Mad Dog Vachon. And they got in a ring. I'd watch all the other matches, of course. And they were all great performers, great in the ring, everybody. But they got in the ring, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was agog at watching these guys up close, in person, in one of the front rows of the deal. And I thought, geez, I don't know if I could do that or not. Before on TV, I thought, well, I could do that. But now I thought, no, I don't know. These guys are pretty serious. Anyway, after that experience, I went back and I learned some more. He did some more stuff with me. Finally, he said, "Well, we'll have you set up the wrestling ring. You can referee, and you can learn the business that way." So I had a job of setting up, tearing down the ring every night in different places, traveling, driving by myself, tearing down the ring, setting it up, blah, blah, blah. Of course, you set it up before you tore it down. I said that backwards. But I did that for a long time, refereed all the matches. There were always 4 or 5, maybe 10 matches on a card. Maybe I did them all, or maybe I did some of them, but it doesn't matter. But I got a lot of experience inside the ring, just the timing and stuff, whatever happens. And after a while, he says, "Okay, I think you're ready." And he booked me in a match, and I worked with a guy named Johnny Case from Chicago. And Johnny Case was this old pro. And man, we went out there and we tore the house down. Him with me, a rookie who didn't know anything, and he just said to me, "Listen to me, kid." Excuse me. I'll have some Coca-Cola. He said, "Listen to me, kid." And I said, so I did. Of course, I just wanted to learn anyway. And we went through this match, and the people all bought it. They thought it was great, and everybody, it was wonderful. And I left the ring thinking, "Hey, I'm pretty good." Well, then the next match I had, that was in Minneapolis. The next match I had was in Milwaukee. And that was with Billy Red Cloud, also an excellent worker, an old timer. Billy Red Cloud was a Native American, and he had blue eyes, but he was really an American Indian, Native American, and wonderful guy and everything. And he says, "Okay, just follow me," kind of like Johnny had done, and they were just very gentle with me. And he took me through the ropes, and boom, boom, boom. And it worked out great. I thought, gee, this isn't so bad. And I went back and everybody said, oh, great match, good match, good match. And I thought, I did it again. Wonderful, I'm wonderful. So then the third match I had was with a guy named Juan Zendejas, sometimes called. And he was a little more experienced than I was. Of course, everybody was. But not much more. And he knew that we were going to wrestle, so he said, I'll meet you at the gym on Fifth Avenue in Minneapolis, 5th and Hennepin, and we'll talk about what we're going to do. I said, well, really? Because I never did that with the other guys. So he and I got together, and he said, we'll do this and this and this and this at this time, and we'll do this and this and this and this and this and this and this. So I left thinking I knew what he wanted to do, but completely bewildered. Because I never understood this. Anyway, and the match was in Minneapolis again. And the first two matches Verne hadn't seen, but he was there that night. So he was watching me, and Juan and I went out there and we did this and we did that. And we did it according to the plan. And I know everybody thinks that all wrestling is planned, but it's not, trust me. We did it according to the plan, and it was a horrible, horrible match. And Verne, I came out of there and thinking, I didn't have a real good feeling about it, but I think, it couldn't be that bad. And Verne said, kid, you're still as green as grass. You got a lot to learn. Back to square one. So he kind of left me alone for a while, but I still set up the ring. I still refereed, blah, blah, blah. And eventually I started to get more matches and things like that. And then I met this, I didn't meet him, but part of my job was to set up the ring at the Calhoun Beach Hotel where they did the TV for the AWA. And I'd sit in a dark control booth with the director, Al DeRusha. And I'd be there to listen to the guys' interviews and watch the matches, trying to learn all this stuff. And it was a dark, small room. All the TV things, the monitors and stuff, and the buttons that are lit up, and the director pushes this button, that camera, this button, that camera, that, this, that, and the other, and blah, 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 blah. That's where it's all done. It's all the technical stuff. It's a dark room with a few lights. Well, quite a few lights, actually, but not enough to see anything. And there's a doorway, and they always let the door open. And the light from the hallway where the wrestlers went into the ring was always lit. So I was in this dark room, far back, away from the action, to watch. And as I was watching, every time the match was called, it would be Larry the Axe Hennig versus so-and-so, Handsome Harley Race versus so-and-so, Jay York the Alaskan versus so-and-so, Big K Kowalski versus so-and-so, Verne Gagne versus so-and-so, the Krusher versus so-and-so. And then one day, this match was about to begin, and this guy walked by the door just before he's introduced. He walked by the door and he stopped. None of them had ever stopped before. He looked in and he looked at me. And he said, "You'd make a good German." And he went to the ring. And he announced, Roger Kent announced, "Mad Dog Vachon." And he went in there and he tore up somebody there. Just fantastic. He did his thing, and he left. And then, I thought, oh. Anyway, a week later, same thing. He stopped by the door. "You'd make a good German." Did his thing. And I didn't know, I didn't realize at the time, but they were flying him in. I think he was working in California. Flying him in, doing the TV, getting him over, getting him reacquainted with the fans because he'd been there before. I just didn't know about it. Anyway, because I was back in New York in the Army. Anyway, after 3 or 4 times of this, he he said, "You'd make a good German." And I said, "I am German." You know, I don't think he even heard it, but he went off and did his thing. And anyway, that was my first introduction to Mad Dog. And then I met him later when I was refereeing matches that he was in, and we became friends because he was an Olympic wrestler. He actually wrestled on the Canadian Olympic team back in 1948, and so we had this kind of bond or whatever. And he liked me, I liked him. And then somewhere along the line, he asked me to if I'd like to go up to Canada and be his partner. He's going back to Quebec, which is right next to Algeria, in case you were interested. Anyway, to Quebec to be his partner, tag team partner. So I said, sure, you know. And I just met my wife, Bonnie Bogey, who I eventually proposed to not too much later, and we packed up our little red Ford Mustang convertible. That was a hot stuff thing, and we drove to Canada, getting stopped at the border for this, that, and the other. And anyway, we drove up to Canada, and that's where I went from little Jimmy Raschke from Nebraska, who couldn't do an interview if he had to, and I became Baron Von Raschke. And for some reason, being in French-speaking Quebec, Canada, Montreal, I could be falling back on a German accent that I'd picked up from college when I took German. And although my grandmother spoke fluent German, and she didn't want her children to speak it because of the wars and things, and so no, it was never spoken in our home. Anyway, and neither of my parents spoke it. So anyway, I wind up there, and I'm free to speak like this manic German if I wanted to be. Whatever I wanted to be, I could speak like, and I did. And I picked up on it pretty quick because I think little Jimmy Raschke was a little repressed. My alter ego came out. I became Baron Von Raschke. Baron Von Raschke. Anyway, where are we?
We're talking about you going up to Canada and teaming up with
Leduc.
Yes. There's a lot of other guys that I want to talk about that you came cross paths with. A young Bobby Heenan. Memories of Bobby Heenan.
One of my favorite guys, it turns out. Bobby and I, after I'd wrestled in Quebec and actually became the Baron, then the original Sheik, I call him original because he's the only Sheik, first Sheik I ever knew, was Eddie Farhat, who ran Michigan and Ohio and parts of this and that and the other. Anyway, he saw me and he asked me to come to work for him, so I did. After Quebec, Canada, I worked in Michigan, Ohio territory for Sheik Farhat, and from there I left there and I went to Dallas, Texas for some reason.
For Fritz?
For Fritz, yeah. And I saw how he used the claw and stuff, and Don Jardine was down there also using the claw. And I thought, that's a strange hold. Anyway, and from there, then
Is that where you picked up the claw down? Was it St. Louis at all? Did you?
No,
okay.
That wasn't where I picked up the claw. That's where I saw it first.
Okay.
I saw it with Fritz, and I saw it with Don Jardine because they had matches and back and forth. And I thought, well, that's, it was interesting to me, but it wasn't something I just jumped on and thought, oh, that's for me. Anyway, actually, going back from there, I was working for Sheik Farhat, and St. Louis called. They needed somebody to work with former world champion Pat O'Connor in a match in St. Louis at the Kiel Auditorium. So they called me, and I went down there to work with Pat O'Connor, who I'd never heard of, but he was a world champion. I wasn't a wrestling fan, So, but he was a world champion, and it turned out he was a very nice person and all this stuff. And I met him, and we talked briefly, and then we went to the ring, and we're having this match, and everything's going really, really well. I must have learned something along the way because everything was just going super.
How many years in the business was this after you got in the business, working with Pat?
This is 2.5 years.
Okay.
Well, maybe 2.5. 2 years anyway. And we're wrestling in this match, and it's going real well. It's all wrestling holds. You know, I'm an amateur. Pat O'Connor was an amateur. He wrestled in the British Championships. I forget what they're called, but he was, and he knew Maurice Vachon from that stuff too, because Canadians and New Zealanders. He was from New Zealand actually, and claimed Australia. But anyway, we were wrestling in the ring, and the match was going smooth as silk. And at one point in the match, he said, "Put the claw on me," and I said, "What's the claw?" I hadn't been to Dallas yet. "What's the claw?" And he says, "Put your hand on my head, kid." So I did. And I glommed on him, and I held it there, and he started to wiggle and wriggle, and pretty soon the crowd went crazy there. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Unbeknownst to me, Fritz von Erich had been there for years and years. So, but anyway, I didn't know about that. I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. Anyway, it got better and better and better, and the match was a big success. And that was a one-time only booking in St. Louis from the Detroit territory. We called it the Detroit territory. I actually lived in Ohio at the time, but anyway, that match was a big success. And then I wasn't asked back anytime soon, so I would change territories. I went to Dallas, and that's where Fritz was, and Don Jardine had that claw on, and all the people that were there, and Gary, what's Gary's name? The manager.
Gary Hart?
Gary Hart, yeah. Gary Hart was there, and all his people were there, and some great, wonderful people, wonderful wrestlers. The booker. Anyway, I had a great experience there. Dusty Rhodes and I were partners for a while. It was a great experience. Dusty and I were both fairly new to the business. We'd met in Toledo. He just was passing through. And then we became partners down there. We had great matches with the people we wrestled, and Jose Lothario and all those people. And anyway, it was great. And then I was, somehow I got to work in the Indianapolis territory for Bruiser and Snyder. And that was also a great experience. And one of my first weeks into Indianapolis, which was a small territory, and basically it was mostly Indianapolis, but they did work Chicago, and they did work a couple other places, different times. Anyway, one of the first weeks I was there, Pat O'Connor came into the territory, and he told the promoter, Dick Bruiser, he says, "You got to get Von Raschke to do the claw. Make him do the claw." So I started doing the claw, and with different opponents. And pretty soon it got over. And everybody thought it was something special. And if I didn't do the claw, they were disappointed. I'm talking to about the people that paid me.
Right.
So I started doing it. Anyway, I just it got to be part of my repertoire.
You also worked in Pittsburgh a little bit against Bruno. Memories of working Bruno in Pittsburgh?
Bruno who?
San Martino.
Of course, yes. That was when we were working actually at that time, that was when I was working in Indianapolis for Bruiser. We'd woodwork. We'd go Bobby Heenan, myself, Blackjack Lanza, Blackjack Mulligan, and Cowboy Bob Ellis, and the rest of the crew, Jimmy Valiant. We'd go to Pittsburgh and we'd work, and we met Dominic DeNucci and all those guys, and it was a great crew and great people. And
You teamed with Jimmy Valiant too, right?
huh?
You were teaming with Jimmy Valiant a little bit back then.
Could be.
I think Ernie Ladd was there a little bit.
Yeah, I teamed more with Ernie Ladd than I did Jimmy. Jimmy had Johnny Valiant
Right.
at that time, if I recall. But I probably,
What are your memories of Ernie Ladd?
tall. He was a big man. He was a big. It was. I was a former football player, college football player, and he was a college football player that played pro ball, and he was in the AFL, and he was, at the time, I believe, I don't know if this is true or not, but he was like the highest paid guy in the AFL, the old Kansas City Chiefs or whatever they were called, and he made like $50,000 a year, which I thought was phenomenal. Anyway, he was a nice man, and he was a very good friend of mine, good tutor. And
Now, you also worked a little bit in Japan. What are your memories of going over to Japan for the first time?
long trip.
Huh.
Yeah. Well,
Did you like the style?
huh?
Did you like the style over there compared to the States?
Oh yeah, it's you go to different territories. Each territory has a sort of a different style, and even here in the States, they all had little different styles of things they like. Some territories were known as tag team territories, some as singles territories, and different things. But some were called wrestling territories, some were high spot territories, but they were all basically the same. And Japan was more of a close, tight working situation, and that was fine with me, and I just adapted to it. And I think I got over there, and they asked me back maybe 6 times.
Who'd you work for, Baba? Or
Well, at first I worked for a man named Yoshihara, and he he had me back one more time, and then he may have either united with Baba or whatever, but the next time I went was with Baba, and I went back with Baba. Every time I went back was with Baba, but and then Yoshihara had passed away in between there. So
what are your memories about Horst Hoffman?
Horst, he was became a good friend of mine. I had never met him before. We were thrust together. Verne Gagne had met him when he went to the Olympics in Germany. I can't think of the town where they were held now. The big assassination attempts for the Israelis. Anyway, Verne Gagne had met him at the Olympics in 72 maybe. Munich. The Munich Olympics. When was that? 72?
That was the airplane incident?
Yeah,
Shooting?
they captured an airplane, but
Right.
they killed them. Several of the Israelis, the weightlifters and stuff, in their dorms. Anyway, it was that was a bad situation. But anyway, Verne was there, and he met Horst, because Verne was, I guess, scouting some potential people there or whatever. And anyway, he got Horst to come back, and meanwhile, I'd left. Where was I then? I think I left Indianapolis, and I came up, and they said, "Here's your new partner," and I said, "Oh, hi." So Horst and I met there, and wir sprechen Sie Deutsch, and das. And anyway, I knew enough German to get by, and it turned out he was a great guy and just a real interesting person. He was a very worldly person, and we got along great. And in the ring, he adapted his style to our style in America, and he was a great partner for me. He was great, just wonderful.
What are your early memories of superstar Billy Graham?
Billy, just he was so impressive as a physical specimen. You know, he just he had a saying, better bodies by chemicals or something. But he was very open about his how he got there. But anyway, he was a good guy, happy-go-lucky guy, and he complained about the way Wahoo used to smack him till he was black and blue. Bow, pow, and he'd come back, because his pecs were all black and blue. But he was a good guy. I mean, he is a good guy. He's still alive.
Now, you worked for Vince Sr. too for a little bit, right? WWWF?
Yes, I did.
What are your memories of working for Vince Sr.?
I enjoyed working the New York area, territory, Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore, up in Bangor, Maine, and all around this area, New Jersey. It was a good time. I met a lot of really, really great wrestlers, Tony Gurria and Dominic DeNucci and Baron Cicluna, the other Baron, and just really great guys. I'm very fond of my time spent here. It wasn't very long, but it was an okay experience.
From there, I believe you worked a little bit in Mid-Atlantic territory.
Yes,
I think you worked with Giant Baba when you debuted, right?
Yeah, I was working for Vince, and it was kind of like the Pat O'Connor thing. I was called to go down for a guest appearance in Greensboro, North Carolina, and it turns out I was working with Giant Baba, and I hadn't worked for his company yet, so it was kind of scary for me. But anyway, I got in the ring, and you know, he's a big man from a foreign country, and here I am, little Jimmy Raschke from Nebraska, but they introduced me as Baron Von Raschke from someplace else. Anyway, we went out, and 3 or 4 minutes into the match, they were all hooting and hollering for Baba. You know, there's no accounting for people's taste. There I was, cute as a bug. Anyway, we had a great match, and everybody was happy with it. So.
Now, there was a lot of good talent down in the Mid-Atlantic area when you were down there.
And then they asked me to come down. Is what I was going to say. But yeah.
What are your memories of Ricky Steamboat, young Ricky Steamboat?
Fantastic performer, gentleman, nice guy. What I know of him, he was first class guy, first class worker.
You started teaming up also with Greg Valentine. Memories of being with Greg and
the Hammer.
Yep.
Also a great guy, just great partner. Just
You had some great matches against Orndorff and Jimmy Snuka.
Oh yeah,
and I remember the crowd heat was amazing.
Yeah, it was. In my own opinion, they were fantastic matches because Snuka was just this super worker, and just off the wall at the time. You know, nobody was flying off the ropes like he did, and then he initiated most of that with. They do it a lot nowadays, but he did it with meaning and with force and with power. And yeah, it was. And Paul Orndorff was such a great athlete and such a great physical specimen.
What were your impressions of Steamboat and Jay Youngblood as a tag team?
Well, they were like dynamite as far as a tag team because they were both young guys, personality-wise, and all the girls were gaga. You know, it was amazing because it was just like an automatic boom.
You actually started to go babyface for a little bit around that period of time when you and Paul Jones split up. What are your memories of being a babyface down there?
Well, you mean back when people started to understand who I really was.
Right.
You know, I was misunderstood for years and years and years. I just couldn't believe. But anyway, it was kind of fun. You know, Paul and I had a real good run. Paul's we had this little tiff where I was, I guess, the underdog for a while, and but we've since made up, and we're still good friends. And I like Paul a lot. He's an interesting guy.
You also worked the Georgia territory for Georgia.
Yeah.
Was Ole booking when you went in? Or was it Barnett?
Barnett. Oh no, Bill Watts was the booking when I went in. Bill Watts.
What are your memories of Bill?
Bill was Bill, and
was he a bully?
he's kind of pompous. Is the best word I could think of. But he was pompous. I'd met him before. He's okay, but he was into being Bill and stuff, and which is okay because I guess he was successful in other places. He wasn't very successful there, and then they replaced Bill with Ole, and Ole was stuck in a rut, but he was okay too. I mean, there are people I worked for. I can't, I don't want to knock them because they were just doing what they thought was best.
Who were some of the guys that you worked with in the Georgia territory? What were some of the guys as far as talent goes?
Oh, Tommy Rich.
Piper? Was Piper there?
Roddy Piper? No.
Not yet, okay.
Not yet. Tommy Rich. Boy, I haven't thought about this for a long time.
What year is this? 7.
Don't ask me years.
DiBiase, maybe?
Teddy might have been there. I'm not sure. I worked with Teddy several times, mostly in St. Louis, though. I don't think I worked with him there. But maybe I did. I don't really recall. They had great talent going through there. The guy that got killed in Puerto Rico.
Bruiser Brody.
Bruiser Brody was there. They had great talent. I don't know. I worked with them, and I worked with them all. I just don't remember tonight, in this minute.
Gotcha.
I'm old.
How old are you now?
Older than I should be. I'm
Yeah.
71.
71? Wow. Memories of
July 30th, 2011.
Memories of young Ric Flair. Memories of your first meetings with Ric Flair.
Well, Rick, actually, I was in Minneapolis, and I think I had his first or second match. And he showed, he had a big body back then. He was a big kid, weightlifter, and he had the big pecs and the big chest and the big arms and all that. He showed potential to be a very, very good wrestler, but I had like his second match, and we went through it, and it was kind of like my second match with Billy Red Cloud. It seemed to go really, really well, and hopefully it did for Rick, and I hope he's a success someday.
Did you see the potential?
He is.
Did you see the potential in him at a young age?
Oh yeah, he had it. He was Ric Flair, and as soon as he met George Scott, who wanted to make him into another Buddy Rogers, he fell for that. That was him. It was automatic. So.
You went over to Germany for a little bit as well, and you did the Germany gimmick over there. Were you apprehensive about going over to Germany at all, doing the German gimmick?
No, actually, I look forward to it because I had been to Germany, but I never worked there, and I was a little bit. I didn't know how they would take me as far as pretending to be a Baron and Von Raschke, and Raschke is my real name, but I don't think I came from any Barons. Anyway, so I was a little nervous about that, but I got over there and I started just working like I worked here, and I worked hard, and I always, when I went out in the ring, I did the best I could do. best I could do every night. Small town, big town, Japan, Canada, U.S., Germany, wherever I worked, Austria, wherever I worked, I did the best I could. And I had a feel for the people. I had a feel for the people in Japan. I had a feel for the people in Germany and Austria and Canada. And I could just, it was something that was like a sixth sense for me. And I drew energy from that, and I reacted to the people and how they reacted to me, and it just kind of worked out to be a good thing, because unfortunately the people in Germany didn't understand me either. There I was to be their friend, and they despised me. I didn't get it.
Yeah. That makes no sense.
You got to pay attention.
From there, you came back and you went back to work for AWA a little bit. How different was the AWA from when you first were there, when you went back in the early 80s?
Well, a lot of the talent had been drawn away to the WWF, the top talent. The AWA, when I was first there, and this next time I was there, it was like one of the prime territories. It was the prime territory, actually, because everybody liked to go there, and they were always trying to go there because they could work a lot, they could make money, and the towns drew, and the payoffs were pretty decent. They weren't the greatest, but they were pretty decent. And you can make as much money there as you could in the New York territory or the San Francisco territory or any of the other territories. You could make more money, actually, because all those people wanted to come there, and they did. You know, Ray Stevens came from San Francisco, and Nick Bockwinkel from L.A. or wherever, and they just all came, and they did well, and they enjoyed it. It was a great territory. But when I went back the third time, which was towards the end of a lot of careers, the WWF had sucked away a lot of the talent, and it hurt them. It hurt them a lot. More, not so much the Hulk Hogans and those people, but the Bobby Heenans and the other people, you know, the Jesse the Body and all those people that were, you know, they weren't the big star, but they were pretty darn good.
What are your memories of Greg Gagne?
Adrian Adonis, by the way. What?
Yeah, Adrian too. Greg Gagne?
He's a good kid. I like him. I like him a lot. Oh, he was a great worker. In the ring, he was a great worker. He never had the real physical appearance. And for a guy like me to say that, you look at my body, you look at my face, you look at me. What's that guy doing in the ring? But Greg is. But he was a great talent. He had great timing, great physical attributes. That, I mean, he could do anything in the ring. You know, he could drop kick. He could, you know, jump over the moon. Whatever he had to do, he could do. Drop kicks and all that stuff.
How involved was Greg behind the scenes with the office? Was he pretty involved?
Well, he was. He was part of the management. He was Vernon Wally's voice to some extent.
You also teamed up with the Krusher too back then.
Yeah.
What do you remember teaming with the Krusher?
You know, it turned out that, you know, he wasn't such a bad guy after all. We had many, many fights, and, you know, we had feuds and stuff, and they all drew money, and it was great. I'm talking about it from a business standpoint.
Right.
But Crush was a Crush, and he did what he had to do and what he wanted to do, but he was such a great talent. Especially his interviews were classic. He could say stuff and do stuff, and the people loved him, and they were behind him. And anyway, when Blackwell and Studd turned on Mad Dog, and all this stuff happened, and then Blackwell and Patera turned on everybody, and the Sheik out on LKs got thrown in the mix. Crush needed a partner, so he picked me, and we got along great. He was a great guy. I loved Crush. I turned out to love Crush. I went from He's okay. But now, yeah, I loved Crush.
What are your early memories of young Kurt Hennig?
Good kid, funny guy. Just he laughed at all my jokes and all my saying. I had him fooled from the beginning. Anyway, I love Kurt. I love Kurt Hennig.
Big River?
Huh?
Big River? He became a Big River.
Oh, he was he didn't become one. He was one. He was a ribber in high school. We would go to wrestling and dressing rooms in high schools and stuff, and he'd go and take everybody's lock off the lockers. I mean, he had that, he could do that. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. And then he'd lock them all together, and so the kids going to school next day wouldn't find it, be able to find their lock. He was nuts, but he was fun. He was a lot of fun.
What are your memories of the young Road Warriors, Hulk and Animal?
They had a great gimmick, and they had a great manager, and Paul Ellering, and they drew money like crazy, but they ate up a lot of talent, local talent. In the AWA, they just squashed everybody, squash, which was probably not the right thing to do, but everybody let them get away with it. So, and then they did it in the WWF, and they did it in the, down in Charlotte and all that stuff. But the guys themselves were great guys. I love the guys. And, actually, Krusher and I had some great matches with them.
I was going to ask you, were they easy to work with, or was there any apprehension with dropping the belts to those guys?
I had no problem working with them myself. Crush was a little upset with him a couple of times, but they didn't quite get the overall picture that included the Krusher, and to them he was like passe or something, but he wasn't. He was still able to draw money, and you could have made a lot of money with Crush if you'd thought about it a little bit. But anyway, but they were just doing what they did.
Would they sell for you guys, or were they?
They sold for, they were good guys. They didn't mean it, but they had some bad advice from somebody occasionally. But in the end, after everything's said and done, they were great. They did the job. They drew a lot of money.
What was it like working for Verne?
Like any boss, you work for him and you do what he says, and you're happy, he's happy, and if you don't quite do what he says, he's not happy, and probably try to make you unhappy, and you go on from there. I mean, I didn't get into his life, and he didn't get into my life, so
No.
I just showed up and did what I was supposed to do.
Around this time in early 80s, 83 is when Vince started, gobbling up the territories and, taking all the major names. Was there any contact between you and WWF back then as far as maybe coming into the territory when Hogan and Mean Gene and some of the other top guys from AWA went over?
I don't think so. I'm still waiting by the phone, Vince.
You would have been a perfect character, to go in it, especially with the Russians.
Yeah, eventually they did call me up, but it was like an old, Bobby Heenan and I used to drive in the cars a lot, and one time we were driving by the Indiana State Prison. He looked at me, and I think I was driving. He says, we go by this big long wall built structure. Those guys make $1.95 a week in there. And I looked at him and I says, Bobby, is this another one of your get rich quick schemes?
Huh.
And we kept going. Anyway, and then another time he said, you know what I want to do eventually? I want to work, and then I want to become part of the management and maybe own my own territory. And then there was a particular guy he didn't like in the business, and he says, then I want to, I'll call him Mr. X. Then I want to call up Mr. X and bring him into the territory. And I said, really? Why is that? Because I knew he didn't like him. He says, so I could fire him. Huh. And that's kind of what Vince did to me. He brought me in and fired me.
Wow.
I was there for 2 or 3 TVs or whatever it was.
What year was that? In the 80s?
I don't remember.
What was the morale like in the locker room in AWA when WWF started to take some of the major talent from you guys?
Well, we just, the AWA, it was a great place to work. Everybody got along, and there was joking and fun, and from the first day I started in the territory, I was kind of an outsider when I first started because I was the ring guy, just not quite up to where everybody else was, and I used to watch them, and they were all joking and having fun and digging this and digging that, and the AWA was a great place to work. And major towns, they always had a case of beer, so that made everybody happy, especially George Scrap Iron Gadaski, because he'd put it in his bag and take it home with him.
Memories of young Scott Hall. You remember Scott?
Scott Hall, yeah, he was tall.
All right. Huh.
And he won the big truck. He won the big truck with the big wheels. And right after he won it, he and Kurt Hennig were going to meet me and take me to the next town, whatever it was. And here they come up. Verne had some kind of a thing where they could win this big truck, and they won it and they kept it, but they weren't supposed to. But anyway, so I see them pull up in this truck, and the tires are this high. Can't see that, can you? But they're like monster tires, bigger than tractor tires. And you had to go up the steps to get into the truck. Oh my goodness! So I climb up there, and that's when I was younger. Now it was still hard, and we drove off to the next town. Scott's, he had potential. He's a big kid, willing.
What are your thoughts on this current situation? I don't even know if you're familiar with it.
Not.
He just has a lot of personal demons and stuff.
Huh?
He just has a lot of personal demons. I didn't know if you were aware.
No, I didn't. I saw him either a year or maybe 2 years ago in St. Louis for whatever that company is.
Which one's that?
Dixie owns it.
Oh, TNA.
Yeah, TNA.
Let's talk more about AWA. Larry Zbyszko. Memories of Larry?
Well, I knew Larry from the WWF. WWWF. Shortened to WWF now. Anyway, I met him there and worked with him. He was fine. Then he went to the AWA, and he had a little different style of working, but it was that was all okay too. And Larry himself seems like an okay guy, just
Rick Martel.
He has a pet snake, but other than that, Rick Martel, another great guy, just a terrific worker, just can bounce around and bing bang boom 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 boom.
What are your early impressions of Hulk Hogan? What are your memories of the Hulkster? I think he had a little trouble catching on to what the business was all about, and they pushed him and pushed him and pushed him, and he couldn't quite get it. I know they brought him into AWA to be as a heel, and he just didn't have enough experience at the time to be a heel. He didn't know how to do it, and they even had a pretty good manager with him, Johnny Valentine, who was a great talker and stuff. And, anyway, and he was sort of in the emulating the Billy Graham style. Right.
And it didn't get over. It didn't get over at all. So they had to let Johnny Valentine go, and then they made him a baby face. They made him a baby face, and that worked out. And he drew a lot of money. So, and for the rest, it's history.
Did you see the potential in him as a big baby face?
It wasn't my job, so I don't know. I thought, he's a big guy. He's going to probably do okay. Just being a heel wasn't his thing at the time.
Memories of
And I think even after a while, it still isn't his thing. But anyway.
Andre the Giant. Memories of Andre coming into the territory. He did a better
Yes, I do. I was actually being flown into the Grand Prix Wrestling in Montreal because he was brought over from France, and he worked there first, as far as I know. And that's where he met his longtime traveling companion, whose name I've just forgotten. I know it, but anyway, Andre came in. He's this huge, tall, lean guy. And a guy jumps out of the ring, and Andre jumps out of the ring, and Andre catches the guy. I mean, quick like a fox. He just. I'm looking at this big, tall guy. I mean, he really big head. He still had a big head. And he was just really an athlete, just really boom, 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 boom. And I thought, geez, that guy is super. And then he did so many other fantastic things in the ring. He was a really good athlete when he first came over. He was younger, and of course, as he got older, he got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah, but he was always a great guy, wonderful person to be around, and he always called me boss, and he always wanted to play cribbage with me. So, and I was always glad to play cribbage with him, and maybe sip a suds or a few, 2, 10, 7, 9.
What are some other big names? Nick Bockwinkel in AWA. Memories of Nick.
Yeah. Good friend, great guy, super worker. Classic. He was like a classic champion. He wrestled. He did it all with wrestling, and he got the great response, great effect.
Stan Hansen. Memories of Stan.
I wasn't around Stan very often or very much. Murder and mayhem. That was his style. It was just, not much wrestling, but it was just Stan.
Jerry Blackwell.
He drew a lot of money. Jerry was a super athlete. You know, he's just Jerry. I was told that Jerry could dunk a basketball. I don't know if that's true or not. But he was a very good athlete, very strong, very powerful guy. And great worker, great timing, great, excellent. And he could babyface, be a heel, you know, just wonderful worker.
What led you to leave the AWA?
Poverty. I just had other opportunities, so I left him 3 times. So.
Right. Then you went to work for Jim Crockett Jr. for a little bit.
Yeah.
You came in and you worked a little bit with Ivan and Nikita.
Yeah, that was yeah. The second time I went down.
Right. What are your memories of working with Ivan?
Dusty Rose was booking.
Right.
Well, Barry Darso, who was working as one of the Koloss, got hurt on TV, I think, in the ring, and I happened to call Dusty, my old friend who was my partner down in Dallas, and we'd seen each other a few times over the years. And anyway, I called Dusty, and I was looking for a place to go because I'd taken some time off to watch my son play football, and I needed to work. So I called him, and he says, well, we do have a spot. And Barry had unfortunately, busted his knee really, really, really bad, or leg, I don't know what it was. But, so I went down there and teamed up with the two Koloss.
Easy.
Oh, piece of cake, yeah, they were great. And we worked mostly with the Road Warriors and whoever, and they, but by then they were just piece of cake too. They were great.
You also teamed up with the Barbarian, I believe it was for the Crockett Cup in '86. I forgot who you guys worked.
Huh?
I forgot who you guys worked at the Crockett Cup '86.
Who we worked with?
Yeah, do you remember who you worked at the Crockett Cup? I don't remember.
Tito Coppa was involved in that, wasn't he, or not?
I'm not sure. I know you were managed by Paul Jones. You became part of the Paul Jones Army.
And yeah, I know. Just
that's when you started feuding with Jimmy Valiant.
I did. Yes.
Did you like Dusty as a booker? A lot of people say you know, he was a decent booker, and other people have a different opinion on him.
I love Dusty. I love Dusty as a person because he's a friend of mine. He has wild and crazy ideas which work, and you know, he's all they're wild and crazy, but they're based in the central core of wrestling, and I mean, it's not so fantastic that it's not fun to watch. So, yeah, I love Dusty.
WWF brought you in. You managed the Powers of Pain for a little bit. Why was that so short-lived?
That was the story I told you about.
Gotcha.
About Vince wanted to fire me. Anyway, I don't know. Actually, I went in there to be the spokesman for those two, and both great guys, by the way, and they were getting the job done in the ring and everything, but I didn't measure up. I guess I didn't measure up. They kind of didn't want me. They kind of wanted me to do it their way, and I wasn't real receptive to that, so I was kind of doing it half their way and half my way, and it wasn't what they wanted or whatever it was. So they fired me.
Did you regret not doing it their way and taking the payday, or?
Paydays are always nice, but I could care less at this stage of my life. I'm a happy guy.
And you went back to AWA. What was it like being part of the AWA during its final years?
Well, the final years, it was kind of sad, but we kept trying. They kept trying, but they made a lot of mistakes.
You think Verne was out of touch with the business at this point in time in the 80s?
Possibly, you know, who am I to judge? But yeah, it slipped away from him anyway.
What was the morale like in the locker room during the final years? Were the boys depressed?
I don't remember any depression. We had Wahoo McDaniel as a booker, and he was an up guy, and Wayne Bloom and Mike Enos as champions, and Kurt Hennig as the AWA champion. They were the tag team champion. And
were you there when Lawler came in? And they worked a little bit with Memphis, and Curry came in for Super Clash 3?
No, I wasn't there at that time. I was there for one of Lawler's appearances, but I was not there for that Super Clash thing.
Were you there for Wrestle Rock?
No.
No, okay. Were your memories of the Team Challenge series?
Jake Millman.
Right.
Yeah, it was interesting. I didn't understand it. As I went through it, I didn't understand it, but and even so, now later looking back at it, I really don't understand it. But it was a good, you know, it was probably a good thing to try. Maybe it didn't work. I don't know. I think it didn't. But
what are your memories of a young Leon White when Vader came into the company?
Oh, big impressive guy, and just he was a good guy, and he was very athletic. He did a lot of things.
I guess for you, do you consider AWA your home fed since you were trained by Verne? And do you feel that was your number one promotion that you were loyal to?
Well, I was loyal to whoever I worked for at the time, and I always considered Verne and Wally and the AWA as the people that started me in the business. I always respect that, and I like them for that. So I guess I like them as much as anybody or more. But I didn't mind working for Jimmy Crockett or Bruiser or Snyder or Fritz or whoever else I worked for. I worked for a lot of them. Dusty and Eddie Graham.
What was Florida like? Florida Championship. I didn't even ask you about Florida Championship Wrestling. What are your memories of working down in Florida?
My partner at the time was Dick Murdoch, and it was just a great time. Unfortunately, I didn't have my family with me, but so I roomed with Dick Murdoch in a motel, but
he was a very hard man to follow, but he was. I loved Dick Murdoch, and we had a great time down there. If I would have been home part of that time, it would be even better. But yeah.
What did you do after you got out of the wrestling business? What made you leave the business?
Nobody would book me. That's what made me leave. I was before I quite got out of the business. I was still working at the AWA, and I was still being on TV every once in a while. This, that, and the other. I started. I went back to my old profession, which was teaching school. So I substitute taught. I tried to actually get a long-term, regular teaching job, but one of the places I interviewed, the principal of the school said, after all these other people, it was a committee thing, and the other 3 teachers just loved the idea that I would be working with them, and the principal said, I don't know, I've seen you on TV. You might snap. He said, now wait a minute, I'm just a teacher, if I'm a teacher, I'm a teacher. If I'm a wrestler, I'm a wrestler. It's different. Anyway, he didn't understand, so I didn't get that job. And so anyway, I went into substitute teaching. I think I subbed for 12 or 14 years in different places. I enjoyed that too. I like kids and stuff. So.
Any of the students ever recognize you?
Oh yeah, they used to. Especially at that time, I was still on TV, so they might see me the week before, the week after, and Mr. Raschke, Mr. Raschke. So I'd go to a new school. I'd go to, different schools in this big metro suburb thing. And Burnsville, Prior Lake, and later other places. Anyway, and they'd all say, you're the wrestler. And they want autographs. And, I'd spend the first 2 or 3 days signing autographs and saying hi and da-da-da. Because you're supposed to stand outside your room to keep the halls clear and all that stuff. And then after 3 or 4 weeks, they'd say, oh, there's Mr. Raschke. Another teacher, So,
right.
Fame is fleeting, trust me.
What do you think of the state of the business today? Do you still follow wrestling at all? Do you ever watch it on TV?
Not unless I absolutely have to. I'm not, once in a while we're at a place where it's on, so I'll watch it. It's interesting, but it's different.
You think the business is a lost art now?
Well, they've made it quite different. I don't think it's. I don't know. It used to be you did wrestling to make high spots. Now they make high spots to make high spots. So I don't know. It's so strange to watch it because it doesn't make any sense. We back when we told a story. It was a kind of a melodrama. Good, evil, sometimes in the middle, sometimes far apart. Bad, good, bad, good, whatever. And we did the best we could to make the story work. And sometimes the people would buy into it from the beginning, or you'd start out. You could start out different ways. You could start off with a bang and bring it down and build it up, or you just bring it in mellow and bring it up, and then you'd have a big thing, and then you'd slow it down. So it ebbed and flowed, like you go through the chapters of a book. Some are exciting, some aren't. Some are good, and some aren't. But here you go, you got the bang, 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 bang. Even Bruce Willis movies have some slow time. I like action movies too, but Arnold Schwarzenegger doesn't always go boom, 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 big cannons. Sometimes he's a robot just munching on iron or whatever he does, and then he goes off. But it's strange. It's just strange.
It's changed. Looking back on your career, who were some of your favorite guys to work with?
If
you were to pick a match,
I was so lucky to work with all the best in the country and actually in the world. It just, I was blessed to work with these people that took the time to make the effort to make me whatever I became. I couldn't single out 2 or 3 because I might hurt the feelings of the other 1,000, you know. I don't know how many there were, but anyway, it's just, there was some amazing talent around, and they were just, you know, Juan Zendejas and I were rookies, and he and I didn't have the greatest match, but it wasn't his fault, it wasn't my fault, because he wanted to have the greatest match. He wanted to script it, and it didn't work, you know, and I wanted it. I wanted to be great, so I let him script it, and it didn't work out. But Johnny Case and I had a great match, and Billy Ray Claw and I had a great match, and Don Leo Jonathan and I had a great match, and Wilbur Schneider and I had a great match. You know, all these different wonderful people, just, they could perform, and I could go along with the show, and they were great matches. They turned out to be great matches. What I had to do with it, I don't know. I was just there doing what I could do.
Any regrets?
Not a one.
Favorite territory to work?
Again, I liked them all. I just had a good time.
Right. Is there anything you want to say to your fans out there that you might not have ever had a chance to say until now?
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Actually, I love all of the fans. The fans are what made the business, and they are still part of the business and will always be. And the only thing I haven't said to all of you, each and every one of you, is, that is all you need to know.
Watch thousands of exclusive shoot interviews right now on TitleMatchNetwork.com.